Good evening and welcome to Sunday Politics on Trust TV, your trusted platform for in-depth conversations on politics, policy and governance. I am Shafi'u Suleiman. Tonight, we turn our spotlight on what many will term Black Week due to devastating tragedies that struck in Niger, Kano, Borno, and other places in the outgoing week, with a huge number of casualties of innocent Nigerians struggling to make ends meet. While a flash flood, according to official figures, killed 153 persons in Mokwa, Niger State, displaced over 3,000 and destroys homes and sources of livelihood. In Kano, 22 athletes lost their lives in a ghastly auto crash at Dekat Bridge in Kura local government area of the state on their way back home from the National Sports Festival in Ogun State, tagged the Gateway Games, where they represented their home state. Another tragedy struck in Borno State, precisely Mairari village in Guzamala local government area of the state, where it was reported at least 9 persons were killed by a planted improvised explosive device while waiting to board vehicles to their various destinations. Now on Sunday Politics tonight, we'll be taking a look at the causes, the responses and proactive steps being taken to mitigate these disasters. And we're joined by a public affairs analyst, Salihu Mahmud. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you very much, and pleasant good evening to you.
Right. And before we commence the conversation on the main topic, here is a major story in the polity. Now, the Pan-Yoruba socio-political organization Afenifere on Sunday lamented that President Bola Tinubu's renewed hope has turned into a nightmare for Nigerians. Afenifere, in a statement by its leader, National Publicity Secretary Oba Oladipo Olaitan and Justice Faloe, said the midterm report of the Tinubu administration has shown that every human development and socio-political index has regressed. It also accused the administration of engaging in what it called mercy propaganda, claiming false successes. The statement reads, and I quote, "The midterm report shows that every human development and socio-political index has regressed since the coming to office of the President Bola Tinubu administration, turning the promise of renewed hope to a nightmare of regressing hopelessness and despair." End of quote. Once again, thank you for joining the conversation, Comrade Salihu Mahmud.
Thank you very much, and good evening to you and Nigerians.
Right. It's a week full of tragedies, quite sad. Quite a number of people have lost their lives. We're talking about, getting to 200 people, that died in different incidences. But before we go into that, let's just set the stage for the conversation with this story I just read about Afenifere. You've heard what they said. They said President Bola Tinubu has woefully failed Nigerians. I'm sure they are also lending their voice, to the conversations around the midterm assessment of the administration of Bola Tinubu. As a pan-Yoruba group, coming to join quite a number of other people and organizations, what does this mean for the presidency of President Bola Tinubu?
Well, Afenifere, even successive military administrations were not free from it. The problem with groups like Afenifere is that they stay where they are without sometimes moving to assess certain issues. You see, like we always say, once damage has been done and you as the government or administration inherits certain problems, it is very difficult to sometimes address that problem at a time. Let me give you an example now. The president is President Bola Tinubu and the commander-in-chief, right?
Yeah.
In area of human capacity building, employments that are generated in ministries, parastatals, and what have you are still there. Groups like Afenifere, did they care in a way to get in touch maybe with MBS, Bureau for Statistics, because when you are talking about statistics of human capability development, infrastructural facelift, educational advancement, and also of others, you need to have accuracy. So Afenifere already as a group always have their own mindset. I can vividly recall during Abacha administration, when I was running a group, we used to have face-to-face with their policy statements, because sometimes their statements come out of sentiments, then sometimes they just go by a hearsay, what have you. So I'm not in the way.
Is this one by hearsay, looking at the fact that quite a number of people, including those in government, have also admitted the fact that the government hasn't achieved much in terms of its promises to Nigerians. And then going by the statistics, just like you said, they are also in public domain. Statistics around the number of people that have been pushed into poverty, unemployment rate, the inflation that is still ravaging, the economy and all of that. These are statistics that are available. Take, for instance, the recent borrowing, hitting around, getting to the roof, almost three times what the administration met in 2023. All of this, some would say, are statistics that are in the public domain.
Well, you see, let me quote a retired major who was part of the Abacha administration yesterday during the inauguration of Youth Literacy and Mobilization Foundation. He said, as a people, when you are not selfless, you are not patriotic, don't expect that only the people at the position of governance can do it for you. The questions we should ask ourselves too, as Nigerians, are we also selfless? Are we also patriotic? Here is a person appointed as Director General. He wouldn't make the employment for generality of Nigerians, irrespective of class and tribe. He will make it look sentimental by giving kids and kin as well as chronics. That is number one. Number two, the buying and selling, the market forces. You go buy millet, you buy guinea corn, you buy yam, you buy tomatoes, you order certain things until the price escalates or blows out of proportion. Patriotism is like in there. You see, movement of a country forward is a collective responsibility. The moment, even at the part of the followership, there is no patriotism and selflessness, the leaders alone cannot do it, because the followership makes the leadership. I'll give you an example. We've had cases where they will say, okay, open portal for recruitment into Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, Nigeria Immigration Service, Customs Service. The President and Commander-in-Chief has given the waiver, the approval. Now it is the responsibility of the heads of those agencies, whether Commandant General of Civil Defense, whether Controller General, what have you. What do you find? At the end of the day, some corrupt officers there will go milking innocent poor people to pick some money. So we are there to be selflessness and patriotism. This wouldn't happen. Is that also the fault of the president? Because I know from the coming of this administration, I have monitored strictly enlistment into lower and upper cadre. Let me start from paramilitary. You find out that the racketeer, the employment process, by collecting money and giving, even though it remains allegation, you find out in some other quarters, senators, House of Member, even though it remains allegation, and other. So the issues are, we ourselves as followership in the society, we must be honest, patriotic and selfless and love one another. The President and Commander-in-Chief is the President and Commander-in-Chief. Of course, it is his administration. Sometimes when they give orders, people flout it. But we saw some that recently worked. When there was a Mahmudawa terrorist invasion in Kayama local government, in Barutel local government, even this your medium helped to propagate it. I want to tell you, immediately the General Officer Commanding 2nd Division, Ibadan, they moved to Kayama. After the visit, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Oloyede, went to Sobi Barracks, gave 1 month ultimatum. I can tell you vividly today, these communities of Kemanji, Nanunu, Kukani, Kokobani, Taberu, Ilesha, Barba, it has reduced very well. Right. So that is action. So the issue I'm trying to talk about, we are the indigenous of these areas, not to selfless and patriotic, to have transmitted these issues to the hearing of the government. And this same thing is not being extended by inhabitants of Northeast and Northwest, where more than half of some villagers in Northeast are also part of the menace.
Right. Okay. You're talking about the response, but what Nigerians want to see is the result. For instance, Mr. President, asked Nigerians for their mandate, and they gave him this mandate. The box stops on his table. It is not about blaming anybody. All of these people you are talking about are his employees, and then leadership demands for accountability. Requires accountability. You have given people directives to engage, to employ Nigerians at different levels, but yet you don't follow up to find out whether those employments have taken place. Remember, in this statement, Afenifere is also talking about propaganda, saying that the government largely dwell on propaganda, things that are not being seen by the people. Cogent, verifiable figures, to show Nigerians. For instance, you're talking about employment has been generated. The government should be able to tell Nigerians we've been able to generate this number of employment in this sector, in the sector A, B, C, and D. Nigerians will now see a verifiable and cogent outcome, so to speak. Didn't you think that is necessary?
It is very, very necessary. And I will take it from this angle. At the federal level, Mr. President is in charge. We have state governors. We have elected senators. We have House of Reps members. What are the roles the governors are also playing? Because in the states, you have ministries, right? You have parastatals. Like I told you, it's a collective responsibility.
Right.
Like Afenifere said, most of the policy statements of the administrations are
it's a massive propaganda claiming false successes.
They rewarded rehabilitation of Abuja, Kaduna, Kano Road. Is it also propaganda that we are seeing standard concrete being casted at the Zuba axis that we have gone indirectly to also observe? Is that also propaganda? Is the completion of 30 kilometers out of the kilometers to Lagos, Calabar Coastal Highway also propaganda, section, where the president was there, where market women were there, where other civil society were also there to see? Is that also a propaganda? Then, is the Kayama Kishi Road that never got attention until recently that the contractor mobilized to say that is ongoing also a propaganda? Is the Bode Sadu Kayama Road, even though it has private sector contribution from BUA, is that also propaganda? Are other sections of the road of recent? I was part of the team that went to Abuja, Kefi Road, monitoring what have you. At that axis, they are expanding and reconstructing. They work day and night. And economic activities get boosted once roads are good. Even good roads also help to fight insecurity, according to Minister of State for Works, Bello Mohamed Goroyo, because sometimes when there are bad portions of the road, kidnappers take that advantage, bandits and what have you. So that also, when roads are being fixed, it means it is going to boost economic activities, also going to reduce travel time. So I think of recent, primary health care centers were approved to be sited in many parts of Nigeria. That we can see. IMF loan was repaid. Is that also propaganda? You see,
at the same time, the government is paying IMF loan. It's also taking another loan, from the World Bank and so on. So that's what exactly some people are looking at. You pay a certain amount, of loan, and then at the same time you're also taking another, almost triple time what you paid. So that's what people, find difficult to reconcile. But then you're talking about some of these successes. Is it the matter of lack of, publicity on the part of the government that make it difficult for people to know or to agree that the government is performing? Because some also raise that concern. While things are happening, perhaps behind the scenes, just like you mentioned, some of the ones you've seen, yet Nigerians are not kept abreast with some of this development. I wonder where the problem lies. So
I think the publicity isn't given up to expectation. You can recall there used to be a media tour during the Jonathan administration. So I think in the ministries, agencies, and what have you, that all these things are taking place. They should not expect the spokespersons of Mr. President alone to come and talk the talk. So I think they need to restructure the media angles of most of the ministries and parastatals. I want to tell you, even some parastatals, the anti-graft agencies, okay, look at 750-something houses were forfeited to government. The investigation on the former CBN governor. Even at the time the Minister of Housing went to collect the houses that is going to be sold to the general public, the publicity by that particular ministry isn't enough. So what I'm trying to say is sometimes advices and suggestions works.
Right.
Henceforth, federal ministries, parastatals and other agencies must give publicity 70% priority, because it appears the publicity on some of the achievements of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not up to what ought to be done. Because when you observe within his 2 years, you know I'm also a critic very well. Nobody can tell me about criticisms. I observe. I don't maintain unjustified criticisms. Once I tackle you on this matter, I just gave you an example of Kayama, Baruten, and Kanji. Even yesterday, there was kidnapped in Shia under Baruten local government, a particular Yoruba guy they call Murkaila. It will surprise you that an inhabitant of Shia, by name Aboki, called me around 11 o'clock to tell me kidnappers came, shot sporadically and kidnapped. At the time the intelligence officers went to verify, they were commercial kidnappers. They had already gone to part of, that Shia community under Baruten local government of Kwara State, Shia border with Benin Republic through Sendiro and other areas. They are already gone there and what have you. So what informed this? They knew that whenever we are told, we transmit it to the government just the way we did about that Mahmoud terrorists and what have you. So I think we also need to be patriotic. Then we shouldn't be selfish with certain issues. Once Malan Shafi'u anchored very well, let's give him the pass mark and what have you. If we continue, you see, it made a lot of administrations to fail in this country where you need to, okay, if I put a question through to Afenifere now, with this observation, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is from Southwest as they are, right? Have they written any letter as former President Olusegun Obasanjo normally do, even though his own is always through the pages of papers and what have you, to their own brother, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, that come, we have observed within your this and that, this has failed. Abroad they do it. How many times have you seen in America where predecessors of the incumbent come on the pages of newspaper to be? No, right. They have where they meet and talk to themselves.
Right. Okay. I don't want us to dwell much on this because we have, the bigger topic to talk about, the tragedies. But then, Afenifere is not alone in this. Just like I said, the last line in the Afenifere statement, they're talking about the fact that the government has dashed the hopes of Nigerians. The hope, renewed hope, has now become renewed hopelessness and despair. Before now, quite a number of people has raised such a concern. Professor Usman Yusuf at some point talked about renewed hopelessness and all of that. And then Nigerians are also looking at the realities on ground beyond what the government is saying. But then let's move into the main conversation, the tragedies that occurred, within the week, in succession. The biggest one, the Makwa flood. This one happens to be in your area, around your area. This is area you're very familiar with. Look at it, quite devastating. And this is coming, at the beginning of the rainy season. Some are finding it difficult to understand. Up to now, as we speak, there hasn't been proper explanation as to why this happened. But what do you make up with it, looking at the magnitude of this flood?
Well, we want to pray to Almighty Allah to grant their souls eternal rest. This is rather unfortunate. In fact, while some Radio Germany correspondents were there, we spoke with some of them, and what they also saw was very, very devastating. May their soul rest in peace. Okay. The issues are, you see, sometimes when there are neglects, such kind of things happen. I will start from the government angle. Erosion, for a long time, pervaded majority sites of Mokwa Township. And don't forget, the activities of heavy trucks also on those roads. Yeah. Is an alternative route to Lagos.
Right.
For vehicles.
As we speak, there is concern around the number of heavy trucks that have been struck there, and of course,
all part of the
livestock,
beyond even livestock, other commodities, including other smaller vehicles. For long, complaint has been made regarding the erosion devastating that area, but it was neglected. You know, in Office of Secretary to Government of the Federation, there is Ecological Funds Office under a permanent secretary. Malam Shafi'u, I can tell you, it has become a nightmare that in your town or local government, once you have erosion somewhere, and you write to that office without connections with senator, House of Rep member, whoever. So I think the secretary to the government of the federation must restructure that department under the SGF.
Right.
Because these are issues that touches life. Even though they said during the last administration of Governor Abubakar Lolo that they had applied for it. I don't know whether His Excellency Amadou Bago has laid his hands on it. But beyond that, there are also other parts of Nigeria that are flood prone, because once there is erosion in an area automatically, then there are certain human factors, Malam Shafi'u.
Right.
Sometimes they tell us, don't build along sewage lines, waterways that where water passage and water
plains,
but sometimes we ignore what now happens to town planning departments of local government, even if you don't have standard development control agencies, but they do have in state capitals, they have urban and regional planning, they have development control departments. What is their responsibility? That if you want to build, they must go and do environmental impact analysis, EIA, soil impact analysis, to test those soil, to see whether that place is befitting or that place can be built on. Are you getting my point?
Right.
But what do you find? People wake up, they buy lands, they start building, not knowing whether river, water passes through there and what have you. I can vividly remember a story my father told me, may the soul of Malam Mahmud rest in Al-Jannah Firdausi. Ogunpa, I don't know whether you remember Ogunpa flooded in the 80s. Yeah. It was one of the worst floodings in Ibadan. Ogunpa is a part of Ibadan. Yeah. A lot of lives were lost. So I think that of Mokwa is another repetition of Ogunpa flood disaster.
Right.
So by and large, SGF should make the assessment of ecological fund by local government, by states, and even individuals who have evidence. Because when somebody applies for ecological fund to control erosion, you can send your intel to the area to ascertain SNAP and lots of other things.
Right. So a combination of failure on the part of government and, of course, the human factors.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Talking about the intervention, you talked about ecological funds and all of that. I don't know what to make up with this, because part of the explanation is that the federal government has approved, has opened a bid, so to speak, for the construction of a stormwater drainage in Mokwa, specifically in Mashegu. This was done just April, last April, so to speak, a month ago. So looking at this, and what happened now, you were talking about negligence earlier on. Perhaps the government is also looking at anticipating such, disasters and that is the reason behind this opening of the bid for the construction, for the drainage and all of that. But it didn't happen until the disaster struck. And now quite a number of people has lost their lives. 153 persons, over 3,000 displaced, and then quite thousands of people also, homes destroyed. So who should take responsibility now, beyond just, sending delegation to go and assess the situation or to sympathize with the people? Who should take responsibility of this?
Well, it will be too early to start doing the blame game. Don't forget, it is a two-way thing. The federal government has the Ecological Funds Office under the Office of SGF. Then the state government also have the roles they can play. Don't forget, even a bridge, there's also a bridge collapse as a result of that.
And that's what caught up
And I believe with the bridge collapse, the information already has gotten to Minister of Works, Engineer Dave Umai. Don't forget, he's also a civil engineer, as well as the Minister of State Works, Honorable Barrister Bello Goroyo, who is in charge of FEMA. So I think at this point in time, for the bridge collapse, the Federal Ministry of Works can, in conjunction with the state government, do a temporary route I believe
I think
the two.
that was what is being done
But for the blame now, I don't think it is time for blame.
No, it's not about blame.
What
it's about taking responsibility. I told you about the action that is being taken, but it's delayed.
But I told you about the ecological funds, right? So was there any time the state government or the inhabitants of Mokwa applied for erosion control ecological fund from SGF? These are the questions they should ask, because from some side talks, I learned the state government applied for ecological funds to control that erosion. That is why I said I don't know whether under the incumbent governor, if it is in the positive side, okay, and that money was released, then the state government should take responsibility. If that ecological funds are still lying down in SGF without being released by Permanent Secretary Ecological Funds, then they should take responsibility. But investigation will unravel whatever. But for now, I think if I now blame one person leaving the order without ascertaining certain facts, I'll be very, very unfair to them. But the issues are now, I think the federal government under Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu can constitute a panel. The panel should ascertain whether such funds, when applied for by the Niger State government, was released. And if released, what delayed the project?
Yes. I'm just, I asked that question because, many will tell you that we are being reactive and not proactive in dealing with some of these issues, disasters in particular. Now, the people living along those floodplains, and of course, areas that are prone to flooding, are already known by the authorities. And that is the reason behind, I'm talking about this bid now, opening the bid to do the drainage along that Mashigu and all of that, meaning that the government is aware of this. But then it is being reactive. I mean, it is taking a reactive step now rather than being proactive to stop the disaster from happening. It has happened, it's a natural disaster actually, just like you said. It can happen at any point in time. But then the government is also talking about the fact that understanding the climate reaction, the changes in terms of the climate change and what can happen, what can come with it is a bit difficult now. But countries who have developed can be able to detect some of these disasters coming and then advise those living along those plains appropriately to evacuate. What happened to our emergency response? Intelligence in terms of understanding this climate dynamics.
Well, don't forget our meteorological services often alerts of maybe disaster that could happen related to flooding and what have you, and sometimes people ignore. So I think we also have that office in Nigeria, where we saw severally, they will say that there could be flooding in Kogi, there could be flooding in the bed. Sometimes there was even a time they had to evacuate certain people from certain areas. So even though it's a natural disaster, I don't think even as a developing country we are that loosed like other smaller countries in Africa. So I think above all, it is no matter of the warning or what have you. Even if warning had been given, don't forget there is poverty in the land. And I can tell you, Malan Shafi'u, the entire North Central, if care is not taken, is flood prone. Even Kogi State is still not free.
It has been happening.
Because let me, for example, now, I don't know where you passed Wawa to Kayama in Kwara State. That is Kanji. Wawa is in Borgo local government area of Niger. Kayama is in Kwara State, right?
Yeah.
Major roads there, just 62 kilometers. Half of the roads have been erosion eaten. It was said that the contract was awarded to one company. Are you getting me? This is also the time for the federal government to ascertain. So the issue I'm saying, beyond those disaster of flooding that happen in housing areas and what have you, road disaster, road erosion, road flooding are also imminent. Right now, as I'm talking to you, from Wawa to Kayama this rainy season, there is a big bridge that has collapsed. Erosion has eaten more than half. If a vehicle comes with passengers, they have to disembark from the vehicle, trek over before the vehicle makes the way. If that particular vehicle is not lucky, then you get sink there. So I think holistic approach to it is that Office of Permanent Secretary Ecological Funds, Federal Ministry of Environment, Federal Ministry of Works should embark on general, observation of roads in Nigeria this rainy season.
Right.
Because of course, the worst will also be when there is flooding at the center of the road. It already happened in Mokwa where the bridge fell and what have you. So I think what we also needed to do, what we need to do is that let supervision by ministries also be enhanced. We have state controllers of works for roads and what have you, not until roads are being constructed. No. You can do that duty for the ministers, both the minister and minister of state, by periodically feeding them with information on state of the roads. Right. So road, we have seen this, so that and that. Then the Ecological Funds Office, it is high time to decentralize that office. We want the presence of Ecological Funds offices in state capitals. Office of the Permanent Secretary alone cannot do it. Right. So it appears the manpower is not enough.
So the response it has to be decentralized.
That is decentralized, where in state capitals there should be Ecological Fund liaison offices.
Right. Okay, the president has just ordered the activation of the Emergency Response Center. And of course, he has directed all the relevant agencies, to move into Niger State, Mokwa to be precise, to assist in the response. This disaster has, brought about, humanitarian crisis, so to speak. Quite a number of people have been displaced, homes destroyed, and all of that. But I understand there is a collaboration between the state government and the federal agencies to, provide relief to victims. What do you think needs to be done, urgently to alleviate the sufferings of those people and also those who have lost their loved ones, and how do you think this can be managed?
Well, first of all, the emergency response team should make sure they get a temporary refugee camp, then provide feeding for some of the displaced families, health care, because there and then some even were rescued in some part of it, so they need immediate medical attention. Then certain incentives should be given to them. Then for those that lost their houses and what have you, I think both the federal government, Nigerian Governors Forum, because this is a disaster one too many. Tomorrow it can be another state, we are not praying.
At some point,
so Governors Forum should have a role.
We're talking about Maiduguri. We've seen the level of response.
Absolutely.
And here we are with another disaster.
So the similar response given to that of Maiduguri should be given to Mokwa, because no one knows where it can happen, including our senators and what have you. Then this is the time for our commercial banks to also play a role. They have what they call CSR, corporate social responsibility. Then industrialists, the private sector, members of diplomatic corps, because this is not an issue of government alone. With the scarce funds in government coffers, they alone cannot do it, including individuals who have the wherewithal, who are financially buoyant. This is the time to also do that. But what needed to be done by the federal and state governments now is what I told you. They should have a temporary camp for them where they can be fed and other things, and then some compensation, if possible. Let it be given for those that have lost their houses, because majority of them, but not in the places where the flooding happened, because automatically it is not yet over.
Yes.
So they should look for virgin land where
relocated.
That is it.
Right. Okay. Let's look at Kano, another disaster. 22 athletes coming back from the National Sports Festival. Very close to Kano, and then they lost their lives. Their vehicle plunged into a river. Fell on top of the bridge below. Down the bridge of the Katsale, before you enter Kano, along Kura local government area, and 22 of them, lost their lives tragically. Well, many have raised concerns around, the state of our roads, but I also know that the route between Zaria Kano is almost completed.
That particular side of Dakatsale is a very tired road.
Right.
It has been completed since.
Okay, so there hasn't been official communication as to what led to the incident or the accident, but as we speak, some of the survivors in the hospital and so on. how are you looking at these tragedies, one too many, especially along the routes?
May Allah grant them Al-Jannah Firdausi, even though His Excellency, the Governor of Kano State, Abba Yusuf, declared tomorrow, Monday, public holiday for them to mourn them. Yeah. This is humane. This is expected of him. May Allah reward him. Yeah. May their souls rest in peace. You see, there are many factors, responsible for carnage on our roads. Yeah. Overspeeding, technicality, failure on the part of the vehicle. Then sometimes it could be thought force error. For example, a vehicle could be moving. Yeah. Maybe another vehicle in the process of overtaking or what have you. Yeah. But for this, it is when the Federal Road Safety Corps give us an official statement, we'll be able to know. But for that particular route, is not that
the bad road.
It's not at all, because majority of those areas have been completed and also other things. Right. So the only thing is we need to further capacitate the vehicle inspection offices, Federal Road Safety Corps and others, because you find out that it is very unfortunate. Sometimes you leave Zaria up till you get to Kano, outside where the road safety have their standard offices or meters away, you won't find them in certain places which ought not to be. So I think there needed to be increased funding for them. Then again, high time we build certain hospitals by highway. Yeah. Maybe some of them, even though if it is time, you cannot, late Security and Barrister used to say, that you cannot pass your time when death comes in his Fantasia Fuji, because he said it is already, that is it.
Yeah.
So
the only access to healthcare, to emergency.
So I think Doka Hospital along Abuja, Kaduna, it was what informed the building of Doka Hospital. Yeah. So in other roads, you don't have them. So I think it is high time to have that type of emergency hospital, so that when accidents occur and whatever. Then again, this periodical sensitization that road safety does for drivers, because sometimes majority of this accident is caused by overspeeding. When factors. People see where roads are good, they speed beyond the approved speed limit. So I think sensitization needed to be enhanced also.
Okay. And for those, the victims, the state government, just like you said, has, declared a work-free day tomorrow to mourn, the deaths, those that died and all of that. But what do you think need to be done, to also provide some relief to their families and the loved ones, because they died, in active service, so to speak, representing the state at a national level, a sports level. They're coming back home, making the state pride, and all of that. How do you think the government should reach out, to the families of the bereaved at this point in time?
Well, I think there should be the Kano State government. In the first place, I trust the governor, His Excellency Abba Kabir Yusuf. He will, of course, for those that have children that are married, I know he will do that gesture of giving them scholarship from primary up to secondary. Then if it is the ones that are still in secondary school up to university level. I think my advice to the governor is for the ones that have educated relatives, if they are not married, for the bachelors, I think they can give them job under the Kano State government. Right. Then there should be attractive incentives to those that are married. Then also, if the wives are literate, they can also give them employment. Because I know of an organization in Abuja here, when the husband died, they gave the wife a job and what have you. Beyond that, let it be accompanied with other attractive incentives.
Right. Okay, very quickly before we open the telephone lines, because the program is interactive, we'll get to hear from Nigerians, even though on a sad note, quite about these tragedies. The one that happened in Merari village in Guzamala area of Borno State, about 9 persons were said to have been killed by, a hidden IED, that exploded in a bus terminal, and then it's, this unsuspecting villagers, lost their lives while waiting for vehicles, to take them to our various destinations. What does this speak about, the resurgence, if you like, of this suicide bombings and bomb attacks and all of that is becoming, frequent beyond Borno? We've seen the one that happened recently in Abuja, even though authorities said it wasn't, a suicide incident, but you happen to be at that scene. What do you make up with this resurgence of these attacks on civilian civilian targets?
The fact about the Borno re-emergence of the insurgents is that more than half of some of the villagers are informants to ISWAP, Boko Haram, or ISIS, which differs from the ones that happen in other parts of the geopolitical zones. Is a major problem.
Yeah.
Even if the military or security convoy is moving, before the ambushes, it is some of the villagers that tell them. Don't forget, during General Sani Abacha administration, there was a particular village, I don't know whether you know of that story, where there used to be incessant robbery, that they even had to attack the convoy of a military administrator then, until the Provisional Ruling Council under General Sani Abacha of blessed memory took action. So the problem why it is re-emerging are two.
Yep.
They granted amnesty to some repentant Boko Haram who came, they just, checked how it is, went back and rejoined. Then also the informant attitude of some of the inhabitants of these villages. Then thirdly,
this is reinforcing what the governor has just said, not long ago, that there are informants even within the military hierarchy and among politicians who are feeding this, non-state actors with relevant information and so on. So you are reinforcing that concern.
Absolutely. Beyond just the military and the politicians, the inhabitants of some of these villages are also informal. And don't forget, once these non-state actors go and carry out their nefarious activities, they come and converge at Tumbus Lake Chad area. And you know that place, we share maritime waters between Nigeria and the Lake Chad basin of the Chad Republic. Right. So the issues I'm saying is the security apparatus must enhance intelligence gathering, they must make presence of maritime surveillance squad, which is under Nigerian Navy. Then the Marine Police also. Recently, the Controller General of Immigration had a get-together of how to avert influx of illegal immigrants through the waterways. And the NSA office was there, DIA, DMI, police, and what have you. So the issue I'm saying, they need to further survey and carry out surveillance of maritime waters, because once they are seeing that the land, what have you, is failing, they resort to that. And as regards these land miles and these IEDs and what have you, were there to be capacitated intelligence gathering, they will just disguise. They know how to do it. I don't need to teach them.
So there is need for absolute vigilance, even also on the part of the civilian population.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's about time we get to hear from Nigerians. The number to call is on your screen. Call and share your thought with us. Discuss quite a number of issues, from the development in the polity around the performance or otherwise of the current administration, as from the lenses of Afenifere, and of course the tragedies, the multiple tragedies that occurred in Niger, Kano, and of course Borno. So before we get the calls come in, we're talking about the need to enhance. Okay, there is a caller on the line. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Who do we have on the line?
My name is Abdullahi Shambo from Niger State.
Okay, Abdullahi. Go ahead. Abdullahi.
Good evening.
Yes. Just go ahead, Abdullahi.
I sympathize with the good people of Niger State. That's my state, and the good people of Kano State.
Right.
Over the tragedies that occurs.
Right.
Which we pray, may the soul of the dead ones rest in peace.
Right.
May Allah Rahmah continue to be with them.
I mean, thank you.
And we call upon the government to do the necessary things. Let's look at what is necessary.
Yeah.
And people should try to avoid but traffic rules and regulations.
Right.
Like the incident that happens in Kano.
Right.
As the guest speaker said, on most circumstances, drivers do drive without obeying the rules. And sometimes the occurrence of overspeed,
Right.
they try to compete with the other ones.
Right.
They need to know that they are carrying the life of people on their ways.
Right. Okay, thank you.
That's why that we continue to pray. May Allah mercy continue to be with the dead ones.
I mean, thank you very much, Abdullahi. Yes, Abdullahi is sympathizing with the family of the dead, and of course calling on authorities to do the needful. Okay, we're talking about the need to enhance vigilance. There is the return of these suicide bombings, and of course IEDs, hidden IEDs and all of that. Okay, I think we have another before we answer that again. Sorry for the interruption. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, who is on the line?
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Your name and where are you calling from?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Your name and where you are calling from?
Yes, I'm Barrister Fidelis Oduna. I'm calling from Delta State.
Okay, Barrister Fidelis, go ahead, please.
Actually, we have to sympathize with the government of Niger State and also Kano State, where these incidents occur. These are accidents, they are natural disasters and accidents. Sometimes we say it's an act of God. But then we as human beings ought to do what is necessary for us to forestall these incidents.
Right.
For the accident in Kano, there is need for proper investigation to determine the state of the mind of the driver, so that we can stop these things, nip these things on the board for future occurrences.
Right. All right.
Honestly, we must tell ourselves the truth. Some of our so-called drivers are drug addicted. And this thing, from what road safety said, may have been caused by overspeeding. And so we need to take measures. We just don't continue to lose life.
Yeah.
The Minister of Sports in Kano have to take measures. Such a long journey from Ogun State to Kano. Before they move, they should be able to checkmate who is driving, what is the state of the driver, and also take precautionary measure.
Yes.
So, but we seem to over-relax. That's why things are happening.
Right. All right.
Then on the issue of flooding, we are being warned every day due to the climate changing. These are likely consequences. What is our government doing? What are the governors doing to ensure that during this rainy season, the flood will be reduced? That the consequences of flooding will be reduced.
Yeah.
Honestly speaking, I want to appreciate the governor of Delta State, what he's doing. Every day you see people walking, drainages are being cleaned, new drainages are created. Why?
Right.
To control the flood.
Right. Okay.
So governors in their state should go out and make sure that there are good drainage system in their place. It will reduce the flood.
Yeah.
Once the heavy rain comes, they have access. Right. You can't stop water from moving.
Right.
We have to create channels for water.
Right.
Many buildings are blocking waterways.
Right.
So we need to create waterways for this flood to flow.
That's
If
right.
at the end of the day, if it's not created, they will go and damage houses and take lives.
Right.
So we must do what is humanly possible.
Right.
Not after hearing the warning, everybody go home and relax until the flood came, will not begin to react.
Yeah.
So I pray that our governors will wake up.
Right. Thank you
God
very
help
much.
us in Jesus' name.
Thank you very much, Barrister Fidelis, for that wonderful input. I was talking about being proactive rather than reactive to some of these issues, especially along the disasters management and all of that. And he raised a very fundamental issue around, the long distance, travel by these athletes from Ogun down to Kano. I think it's something that need to also be looked at. Perhaps the ministry, the commission, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, or in Kano, ought to make arrangement for flight, and all of that, instead of allowing them to go this long route and all of that. I think he was making a point there.
Well, I think if we go by religious teachings, you cannot question God, because the issues are, even if flight had been provided, if they can, I don't think there is a direct flight from Kano to Abeokuta.
Right.
Maybe they will possibly land in Ibadan or Lagos.
Yeah.
And after London, Lagos, they have to still pass way to Ogun State. So if it is their destiny that they won't pass that
certainly
day.
It will happen.
So these are some of the issues we should always look at. Yeah. You can remember most of the air mishaps where you even, so that is the issue.
It can happen anywhere.
That is
anytime.
it. But the issue of over speeding, I think the road safety need to be taken it seriously, especially for people that drives government vehicles, because sometimes people feel because I am part of the government, I can drive anyhow. Then coming issue of drainages and what have you, what happens to Saturday environmental sanitation that normally happen in states that cuts across local governments? Because I can tell you, I once visited Mararaba bordering Abuja here. When I entered certain areas, I shed tears. I said, how are these people surviving? The entire
drainage
water view was blocked with leather and lots of other things. So
once there is,
we need to be disciplined ourselves too. Is also another aspect of it. But the major aspect, which I told you, erosion is majorly part of the major problem, because once a community is erosion driven, automatically you are prone to flooding.
Right.
Then when you build on waterways, water drainage passage and what have you, this will also happen. So it is high time town planners, development control agencies of states, as well as other relevant agencies take a bug by the horn, so that if somebody is going to erect a building, even if it is under the local government, let certain processes be met.
Yeah, okay. They need to ensure that there is compliance with the rules and regulations. Thank you very much, Comrade Salihu Mahmud, for talking to us on Sunday Politics. We appreciate your perspectives. And viewers, those of you that were able to call, we also appreciate your inputs on the program tonight. And for those that have been trying to get across, we can do this again on Sunday. But before then, tomorrow, we'll be back with another interesting topics and personalities. Until then, on behalf of the team, my name is Shafi'u Suleiman. Thank you for being there for us.